Have you ever felt like there's a secret the wealthy know that nobody's telling you? A hidden knowledge that separates those who struggle financially from those who seem to effortlessly attract abundance into their lives? What if I told you that this secret isn't locked away in some exclusive vault or taught only in elite circles? What if the real reason you haven't discovered it yet has nothing to do with your education, your background, or your current circumstances, but everything to do with whether you're ready to see what's been right in front of you all along? Here's something most people never realize. Wealth doesn't start in your bank account. It doesn't begin with a lucky break, a brilliant business idea, or knowing the right people. Those things matter, sure, but they're not the foundation. The foundation is something far more profound, something that happens in a place most people never think to look, inside their own consciousness. But before we begin, please hit the like button and let me know where in the world you're watching from today. It's always fascinating seeing who's joining us from around the world. And if you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of our future videos. Think about it for a moment. Has this ever happened to you? You work hard, you follow the advice, you try all the strategies, yet somehow the breakthrough never quite arrives. Meanwhile, you watch others, with seemingly less talent or fewer advantages, rise to levels of success that feel completely out of reach. It's frustrating, isn't it? That gnawing feeling that you're missing something crucial, some invisible piece of the puzzle that would make everything finally click into place. What you're about to discover might surprise you, because the answer isn't another technique or tactic. It's not about working harder or finding some magical shortcut. The truth is that wealth operates on a completely different frequency than most people understand. It's activated from within before it ever manifests in your external reality. That restlessness you've been feeling, that sense of untapped potential, that quiet voice whispering that you're capable of so much more, that's not frustration. That's your inner self trying to break through, signaling that a greater version of you is ready to emerge. Stay with me until the end of this video, because we're going to explore something extraordinary. There exists what I call an invisible book, not something you'll find on any shelf, but a collection of internal awakenings and mental shifts that only reveal themselves to those who are truly ready to receive them. And if you're watching this right now, there's a reason. Something inside you recognizes that you're ready for this knowledge, ready to step into a new level of understanding about how abundance actually works. But here's where it gets interesting. This isn't about positive thinking or simple manifestation techniques. What we're talking about is a fundamental transformation in how you perceive yourself and your relationship with prosperity. Because the moment your internal identity shifts, the moment you truly become someone different on the inside, your external world has no choice but to reshape itself to match. Because that's the hidden truth that changes everything. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic because what I'm about to share with you goes against everything you've probably been taught about success and prosperity. We've been conditioned to believe that wealth is a matter of luck, timing, or being in the right place at the right moment. We're told stories about lucky breaks, chance encounters, and fortunate circumstances. But here's what those stories don't reveal. The people who experience these so-called lucky breaks aren't lucky at all. They've simply cultivated something within themselves that made them ready to recognize and seize opportunities that others walk right past without even noticing. The fundamental difference between those who prosper and those who don't has never been about external circumstances. It's about identity, energy, and internal conviction. Think about the wealthy people you know or have observed. The truly prosperous ones don't sit around waiting for signals from the universe, permission from others, or the perfect moment to arrive. They become the signal themselves. They're unwavering, Self-belief creates a gravitational pull that attracts resources, people, and opportunities into their orbit. It's not magic. It's magnetism created by absolute certainty about who they are and where they're going. But here's where most people get stuck. And this is crucial for your transformation. They're so focused on what they want to achieve, what they want to have, what they want to become, that they completely miss the most important question of all. The question isn't what you want. The question is, who are you when no one's watching? Because that private version of yourself, the one that exists behind closed doors when there are no witnesses, no audience, no one to impress, that's your real identity. And that identity is either moving you toward abundance or keeping you locked in limitation. Let me paint you a picture. Imagine two people with identical goals, identical resources, identical opportunities. One succeeds spectacularly while the other struggles endlessly. The difference isn't visible from the outside. It's happening in those quiet moments when nobody else is around. It's in the private decisions they make when they're tired, when they're discouraged, when no one would know if they gave up or took a shortcut. One person's inner dialogue is rooted in possibility and expansion. The other's is anchored in doubt and fear. Same external world, completely different internal worlds, and therefore completely different outcomes. If you're serious about this transformation and want to continue deepening your understanding of how wealth really works, hit that subscribe button. This channel is built for people who are ready to do the internal work that changes everything. Your authentic identity, the one that emerges in those unobserved moments, is constantly making micro decisions that shape your entire trajectory. Are you choosing thoughts that expand your sense of what's possible, or are you reinforcing old limitations? Are you having conversations with yourself that build confidence and clarity, or ones that drain your energy and reinforce doubt? These aren't abstract questions. They're the actual mechanism through which your life either opens up or closes down. Every single day, in moments no one else sees, you're either becoming someone who can hold wealth or someone who will unconsciously repel it. The journey to prosperity isn't really about learning new strategies or acquiring new skills, though those have their place. It's about excavating the person you've been hiding beneath layers of conditioning, fear, and false beliefs about what you deserve. It's about recognizing that the version of you that doubts, that hesitates, that plays small, that's not the real you. That's just programming, and programming can be rewritten. The question is whether you're willing to do the work when no one's applauding, when there's no immediate reward, when you're simply choosing to be different because you know that's who you truly are underneath all the noise. This revelation about identity being the foundation of wealth isn't just philosophy. It's the practical mechanism that determines whether abundance flows toward you or away from you. And once you understand this, once you truly grasp that your private self is creating your public results, everything shifts. You stop looking outside for validation and start building something unshakable inside. You stop waiting for permission and start granting it to yourself. You stop hoping for luck and start becoming inevitable. Write in the comments, I'm ready to shift my identity, because acknowledging this truth out loud is the first step in making it real. Now, understanding who you are in private is just the beginning. What matters even more is what you do with that awareness, how you begin to reshape the way you operate in the world. Because once you see yourself clearly, the next revelation becomes unavoidable. And this is where most people's understanding of wealth completely falls apart. We've been taught to think of wealth as something we chase, something we pursue, something we achieve through relentless effort and strategic maneuvering. We create elaborate plans, we set ambitious goals, we hustle and grind, believing that if we just work hard enough, long enough, smart enough, prosperity will finally arrive as our reward. But that's not how wealth actually works. That's not the mechanism. Wealth isn't a result you chase down. Like prey, Wealth is a consequence, a natural byproduct of your internal state, your mental vibration, and your deepest identity. Let that sink in for a moment. What you have in your life right now, the level of abundance or scarcity you're experiencing, isn't random. It's not unfair. It's not because the world is against you or because you haven't found the right opportunity yet. What you have today is merely an echo, a reflection of who you've been up until this point. Your current reality is broadcasting back to you the frequency you've been transmitting, often without even realizing it. And here's the transformative part. What you'll have tomorrow, next month, next year, that will be an echo of who you decide to become right now, in this very moment. This is the hidden truth that shifts everything. You're not trying to get wealth. You're becoming someone who naturally generates it. You're not chasing abundance. You're cultivating the internal conditions that make abundance inevitable. It's like trying to get fruit from a tree versus becoming a tree that naturally produces fruit. One is exhausting and uncertain. The other is organic and unstoppable. When you understand this distinction, you stop wasting energy on the wrong things. You stop spinning your wheels, trying to force outcomes. You start investing in the real work, the internal transformation that makes external success a foregone conclusion. Now, I want to go even deeper into this because there's a specific moment in this journey that determines whether you'll actually break through or whether you'll remain stuck in the same patterns forever. It's what I call the mental click moment, and most people never hear it. Not because it doesn't happen, but because they're not tuned in, not paying attention, not prepared to recognize it when it arrives. This click is subtle, almost imperceptible, but it's the single most important shift you can experience. It happens when your consciousness suddenly aligns with a truth you've intellectually understood for a while, but never truly embodied. It's that instant where something inside you reorganizes, where the pieces finally fall into place, where you stop seeing yourself through the lens of your limitations and start seeing yourself through the lens of your potential. It's not dramatic. There are no fireworks or trumpets. It's quiet, internal, private. But once it happens, you can't unhear it. You can't go back to operating the way you used to. You've crossed a threshold, and your entire awareness has shifted to a higher frequency. Think about the moments in your life when everything suddenly made sense, when confusion dissolved and clarity emerged from nowhere. Maybe it was a realization about a relationship, a decision about your career, an insight about yourself that changed how you moved through the world. That's the click. And when it comes in the realm of wealth and abundance, when your consciousness finally aligns with the truth that prosperity is your natural state, not something you have to fight for, that's when your life begins to reorganize itself around this new understanding. Opportunities you couldn't see before become obvious. Decisions that used to paralyze you become simple. Actions that used to feel forced start flowing naturally. The journey to wealth is really the journey to this click, to this moment of internal alignment where you stop resisting your own greatness and start operating from a place of absolute knowing. Not hoping, not wishing, not trying, knowing. And that knowing creates a gravitational field so powerful that resources, people, ideas, and circumstances can't help but move toward you. You become the center of your own abundance ecosystem, and everything begins to revolve around the certainty you've cultivated inside. If you felt something shift while watching this, even just a slight opening or softening of old beliefs, write in the comments, "I felt the click." Because acknowledging these internal shifts gives them more power, makes them more real, anchors them into your awareness. And once you've experienced this mental alignment, once you've heard that quiet click of recognition, the question becomes, what do you do next? How do you take this internal shift and begin to translate it into tangible change in your everyday life? Because here's what most people don't understand. This isn't about getting pumped up with temporary motivation or riding A wave of inspiration that fades by next Tuesday. What we're talking about here goes so much deeper than that. This is the real journey, not the surface-level stuff, not the quick fixes or the overnight transformations that social media loves to sell you. This is about profound internal transformation, about fundamentally reconfiguring your identity at the deepest level. It's about awakening something that has always been dormant within you, something powerful and capable that's been waiting patiently for this exact moment to emerge. And the reason it's been waiting is simple. You weren't ready before. But something has shifted. You're here now. You're listening. You're opening. That dormant part of you is stirring. Think about a seed buried in soil. It contains everything it needs to become a massive tree, but it can't force the process. It has to respond to the right conditions: water, warmth, time. You're the same way. You've always had this capacity for abundance within you, but the conditions weren't right. Maybe you were surrounded by voices telling you to be realistic, to lower your expectations, to accept limitations. Maybe you internalized beliefs about money and success that kept you small. Maybe you simply hadn't experienced enough contrast, enough dissatisfaction with where you were, to be willing to transform at this level. But now the conditions are aligning. Now you're ready to let that seed crack open and become what it was always meant to be. This journey of transformation isn't about adding something new to yourself. It's about removing the layers of conditioning, fear, and false beliefs that have been covering up your true nature. It's excavation work, not construction work. And one of the deepest layers you need to excavate is this: your relationship with your own potential. Because here's a question I want you to sit with for a moment. When was the last time you truly trusted your own potential? Not in a vague, hopeful way, not based on what others told you that you could achieve, not filtered through society's narrow definitions of success or limitations, but genuinely, deeply trusted in your own power, your own capacity, your own inevitable rise. Most people never do this. They spend their entire lives seeking validation from external sources, waiting for permission, looking for proof that they're good enough, smart enough, deserving enough. They negotiate constantly with themselves about what's possible. They think, maybe I could have more, but probably not that much. Maybe I could succeed, but probably not at that level. Maybe I'm capable, but probably not as capable as those other people. And every single one of those negotiations is a small betrayal of your potential. Every maybe, every probably not, every comparison that leaves you feeling less than, those are the transactions that keep wealth at arm's length. Wealth begins the moment your mind stops negotiating with itself about what's possible. It begins when you plant your flag and say, "This is who I am, this is what I'm capable of, this is where I'm going." Not with arrogance, but with quiet, unshakable certainty. Not because you have all the answers or because the path is clear, but because you've decided to trust yourself more than you trust your doubts. You've decided to believe in your potential more than you believe in your limitations. And that decision, that internal commitment, changes everything. Because when you stop negotiating, when you stop hedging your bets, when you stop leaving yourself escape routes and backup plans that secretly communicate to your subconscious that you don't really believe in yourself, when you burn those bridges and commit fully to the version of yourself that you know is real underneath all the conditioning, that's when the universe has no choice but to meet you at that level of conviction. Your external reality is always calibrating to match your internal certainty, always, without exception. So, the question isn't whether you're capable. The question is whether you're willing to trust that you're capable, even before you have proof, even before you see results, even before anyone else believes in you. That trust is the bridge. That trust is the frequency that broadcasts abundance into your life. And once you cultivate that trust, once you stop second-guessing yourself and start moving with conviction, you'll notice something remarkable beginning to happen. Drop in the comments, "I trust my potential," because declaring this out loud rewires something fundamental in how you see yourself and what you allow into your life. Suddenly become stepping stones. The challenges that used to overwhelm you become puzzles you're curious to solve. And the future that felt uncertain starts to feel inevitable. But there's something standing between most people and this transformation. And it's so subtle that they don't even recognize it's happening. It's the trap of eternal waiting. And if you're honest with yourself, you've probably been caught in it more times than you'd like to admit. We wait for more time, as if someday our calendar will magically clear and we'll have endless hours to pursue what matters. We wait for more money, as if we need to be financially secure before we can start building the wealth we actually want. We wait for more clarity, as if the universe is supposed to hand us a detailed roadmap before we take a single step. We wait for signs, for permission, for the perfect moment when everything aligns and the path forward becomes obvious and risk-free. But here's the uncomfortable truth. This waiting is a form of self-deception. It's an elegant, socially acceptable way to remain exactly where you are without having to admit that you're choosing not to move. Because the thing about waiting is that it feels responsible. It feels prudent. It feels like you're being smart and strategic, rather than reckless and impulsive. But what it actually is, in most cases, is fear dressed up in the costume of wisdom. It's your comfort zone protecting itself by convincing you that staying put is the rational choice. Think about how many dreams have died in the waiting room, how many businesses never launched because someone was waiting for the perfect plan. How many relationships never blossomed because someone was waiting to feel completely ready? How many transformations never happened because someone was waiting for a guarantee? Waiting feels safe, but it's actually the most dangerous thing you can do with your potential, because time passes whether you're moving or not, and every day you spend waiting is a day you could have spent becoming. Now, I want to go even deeper into this, because there's something happening inside you right now that you might be misinterpreting. That pressure you feel in your chest when you think about your untapped potential. That knot in your throat when you imagine a bigger life. That restless impulse to change something, anything, about your current situation. You might have been calling it anxiety. You might have been calling it confusion or uncertainty or midlife crisis or imposter syndrome. But it's none of those things. What you're actually feeling is your identity requesting evolution. Your true self, the part of you that knows what you're capable of, is pushing against the walls of the life you've built. It's outgrown the container you've been living in. It's ready for expansion, for elevation, for transformation. And that pressure, that discomfort, that nagging sense that something needs to shift, that's not a problem to be solved or a feeling to be suppressed. It's a signal. It's your internal guidance system telling you that you're ready for the next level, that staying where you are is no longer aligned with who you're becoming. Most people try to quiet this voice. They medicate it with distractions, numb it with busyness, rationalize it away with logic. They tell themselves they should be grateful for what they have, that wanting more is selfish or unrealistic, but gratitude and growth aren't opposites. You can be deeply thankful for where you are while simultaneously knowing you're meant for something greater. In fact, that's exactly the tension that creates transformation. That's the creative friction between your current reality and your emerging identity. What you're feeling isn't random. It's not a mistake. It's not anxiety that needs to be fixed with therapy or medication, though those things have their place for clinical issues. What you're experiencing is the birth pains of a new version of yourself trying to emerge. And this new version knows something your old version doesn't. There's another possible life available to you, one where you don't depend on fate, luck, or external circumstances, but on internal clarity and unwavering self-belief. A life where you're not at the mercy of what happens to you, but where you're consciously creating what happens through the power of your aligned identity. The question is whether you're going to listen to this call, or whether you're going to spend another year, another 5 years, another decade in the waiting room, hoping that someday the conditions will be perfect enough for you to finally, if you've recognized yourself in the trap of waiting, write in the comments, "I'm done waiting," because naming this pattern is the first step in breaking free from it. There's a sequence to how abundance enters your life, and most people get it completely backwards. They think money comes first, then certainty follows. They believe the opportunity has to show up before they can feel confident about their path. They wait for evidence in their bank account before they allow themselves to feel abundant. But that's not how the energy of wealth works. That's not the order of operations. The truth is almost exactly the reverse of what we've been taught. Before money arrives in your physical reality, certainty arrives in your consciousness. Before the opportunity knocks on your door, your identity shifts to become someone who can recognize and seize that opportunity. Before abundance manifests in your external circumstances, the correct vibration has to establish itself within you. The external world doesn't create your internal state. Your internal state creates your external world. The outside is always a reflection, a mirror, an echo of what's happening inside. Always. And the moment you truly grasp this, everything changes. Think about it this way. Have you ever noticed how lottery winners often end up broke within a few years? It's not just poor financial planning, though. That plays a role. It's because they received money before they developed the internal certainty and identity of someone who can hold wealth. Their external reality changed, but their internal reality stayed the same. And when there's a mismatch between your inner world and your outer world, your inner world always wins eventually. The external circumstances will adjust back down to match the internal identity, because you can only sustain what you've become on the inside. Now, I want to go even deeper into this, because this isn't just theory. This is the actual mechanism that determines whether you'll build lasting wealth or whether you'll continue struggling no matter how hard you work. Your internal state isn't just influencing your external reality, it's literally creating it, moment by moment, decision by decision, through the lens of perception and the filter of what you allow yourself to see, pursue, and receive. When you change your identity at the deepest level, when you fundamentally shift who you believe yourself to be, your reality has no choice but to adjust. It must calibrate. It must align with the new frequency you're broadcasting. This isn't metaphysical wishful thinking. This is how consciousness interfaces with the material world. You are the true point of origin for everything you experience. Not your circumstances, not your history, not your current bank balance. You, your awareness, your beliefs about what's possible and what you deserve. Your internal conviction about who you are and what you're capable of. Most people spend their lives reacting to their external circumstances, letting the outside world dictate how they feel and what they think is possible. They look at their current situation and say, "This is reality, this is what I have to work with." But that's giving away all your power. That's making yourself a victim of conditions that you yourself have created, consciously or unconsciously, through your previous identity. The real power move is understanding that you're not a passenger in your life. You're the driver. You're not at the mercy of external forces. You're the force. You're the creator, the architect, the origin point. When this clicks, when you truly embody this understanding, the whole game changes. You stop looking outside yourself for solutions and start looking within. You stop blaming circumstances and start changing consciousness. You stop waiting for the world to give you permission and start granting it to yourself, because you finally understand that the external world only manifests what you first accept internally. If you don't accept abundance as your natural state inside, you'll never experience it as your reality outside. If you don't believe you're worthy of wealth at your core, the universe will agree with you and keep it out of reach. But the moment you shift that internal acceptance, the moment you decide with absolute certainty that abundance is who you are, not something you're chasing, your external reality begins its recalibration. It might not happen overnight. There's often a lag time while the old momentum plays out, but it's happening. The wheels are turning, the pieces are moving, and the life that matches your new identity is, if this is landing for you, if you're starting to see yourself as the creator of your reality rather than a victim of it, write in the comments, "I am the creator," because owning this truth out loud amplifies its power in your life, assembling itself in ways you can't yet see but will soon recognize everywhere you look. But there's a critical distinction I need to make here, because so many people confuse activity with transformation, and that confusion keeps them spinning in circles. When most people talk about making decisions, they're really talking about emotional moments. They get inspired by a video, energized by a conversation, motivated by a deadline, and they declare, "I've decided to change." But then a few days pass, the emotion fades, and they're right back where they started. That's not a decision, that's a feeling. And feelings are notoriously unreliable when it comes to creating lasting change. Real decisions, the kind that actually reshape your life, aren't emotional events. They're identity changes. They're silent, profound shifts that happen so deep within you that no one else can see them, but you feel them absolutely. They're the moment when you stop being one version of yourself and irreversibly become another. Think about the moments in your life when you truly decided something. Not when you hoped or wished or intended, but when you actually decided. Maybe it was ending a relationship that wasn't serving you. Maybe it was leaving a job that was draining your soul. Maybe it was committing to a goal that terrified you. In those moments, there wasn't drama or fanfare. There was just a quiet internal click where something locked into place, and you knew with absolute certainty that there was no going back. That's a real decision. That's an identity shift, and that transformation, that profound recalibration of who you are at your core is happening right now as you absorb these words and allow them to land in the deeper parts of your consciousness. You're not the same person who started watching this video. Something inside you has already begun to change. You might not be able to name it yet, but you can feel it. That's the invisible book opening. That's your identity expanding to accommodate a bigger version of who you're becoming. And once this process starts, once you give it permission to unfold, it doesn't stop. It builds momentum. It deepens. It becomes more real every single day. Now, I want to go even deeper into this, because there's another trap that catches people right at this point in their journey. They've had the realization, they've felt the shift, they've experienced that internal click, and then they freeze because suddenly they don't know exactly what to do next. They're waiting for a complete roadmap, for absolute clarity about every step of the path ahead before they're willing to take the first step. And that waiting kills more dreams than failure ever could. Here's the truth that will set you free. Clarity doesn't arrive before action. Clarity arrives during action. You don't get to see the whole staircase before you take the first step. You take the first step, and then the next step becomes visible. You move forward with the information you have, and more information reveals itself along the way. That's how this works. That's how it's always worked. Life doesn't owe you a detailed explanation of each step before you take it. Life rewards those who move despite uncertainty, who act on conviction rather than waiting for guarantees. Think about every major breakthrough in human history. Nobody had complete clarity before they started. The Wright brothers didn't have a perfect blueprint for flight. Steve Jobs didn't have a detailed manual for building Apple. Every person who's created something meaningful, who's achieved something extraordinary, did it by moving forward without knowing exactly how it would all unfold. They had a vision, they had conviction, and they had the courage to act before everything was clear. And here's what happens when you embrace this truth. You stop being paralyzed by perfectionism. You stop using "I need more information" as an excuse to stay comfortable. You recognize that waiting for perfect clarity is just another form of resistance, another way your fear disguises itself as prudence. You understand that the clarity you're seeking won't come from thinking harder or planning longer. It will come from doing, from experimenting, from taking action and learning from what happens. Movement creates momentum and momentum creates clarity, but you have to be willing to move first. Even when you can't see exactly where you're going, trusting that the path will illuminate itself as you. If you're ready to stop waiting for perfect clarity and start moving with the clarity you already have, write in the comments, "I'm moving forward now." Because declaring your intention activates something powerful in your subconscious mind. But here's where most people sabotage themselves without even realizing it. And it's so subtle, so automatic, that it happens completely under the radar of conscious awareness. You see, even when people have insights, even when they experience that mental click and feel ready for transformation, there's a powerful gravitational pull trying to drag them back to who they used to be. And that pull comes from something most people never think about: their attachment to their old identity. We treat our identity like it's permanent, like it's some fixed aspect of ourselves that we were born with and are stuck with forever. We act as if we're obligated to be who we were yesterday, last year, a decade ago. We introduce ourselves with the same stories, the same limitations, the same explanations for why things are the way they are. And every time we do that, we're reinforcing the very identity that's keeping us from the life we want. But here's what changes everything. Your identity isn't a chain. It's not a prison sentence. It's not some immutable fact about who you are. Your identity is a construction, a story you've been telling yourself and others for so long that it feels like truth. But it's not truth. It's just a very well-rehearsed narrative. And the beautiful, liberating reality is that you can rebuild it whenever you decide to. You can choose right now to stop being the person you were and start being the person you're becoming. You can release your attachment to old versions of yourself that no longer serve you and step into a new identity that aligns with the life you actually want to create. Most people don't do this because they've become comfortable in their discomfort. They know who they are, even if who they are isn't happy or fulfilled or abundant. There's a strange security in familiar limitation. It's predictable, it's known. And humans crave the known, even when the known is painful, because at least it's familiar. But transformation requires you to become comfortable with being uncomfortable, to release your grip on who you've been so you can make space for who you're becoming. And that release doesn't happen all at once in some dramatic moment. It happens in small daily choices about what you're willing to let go of and what you're willing to embrace. Now, I want to go even deeper into this because there's a specific pattern that keeps people locked in their old identity. And once you see it, you can start breaking free from it immediately. It's the language you use when you talk to yourself and about yourself. Every single word you speak, especially the words you speak in private, in the quiet moments when you're having conversations with yourself that no one else hears, is either feeding your old identity or building your new one. There's no neutral ground here. You're always reinforcing one or the other. Every time you catch yourself saying, "I can't do that. It's not enough. I'm not worthy of that. I don't deserve success. People like me don't achieve those kinds of results," you're not just expressing a thought. You're actively reinforcing the old version of yourself. You're telling your subconscious mind, "This is who I am. This is my limit. Stay within these boundaries." And your subconscious, which is incredibly obedient, says, "Got it, I'll make sure your reality matches this identity." And so it does. Your words become your beliefs shape your actions, and your actions create your results. But it works the other way too, and this is where your power lies. Every time you catch that old thought pattern and consciously choose different language, every time you say, "I can learn that. There's something great waiting for me. I'm capable of more than I'm currently experiencing. I deserve abundance, and I'm ready to receive it," you're feeding a new identity. You're strengthening neural pathways that support expansion rather than contraction. You're training your mind to see possibility instead of limitation. And gradually, subtly, but inevitably, this new identity starts to take root, starts to become more real, more natural, more automatic than the old one ever was. This isn't about positive thinking in some shallow, deny reality kind of way. This is about consciously choosing which version of yourself you're going to. If you're recognizing patterns of self-limiting language in your own inner dialogue and you're ready to change it, write in the comments, "I choose empowering words." Because awareness is the first step to transformation. And this brings us to one of the most underutilized capabilities you possess, something that most people go their entire lives without ever tapping into, your mind's ability to completely redefine itself. This isn't just about changing your thoughts or shifting your perspective. This is about fundamentally rewiring the operating system that runs your life. Your mind has this extraordinary capacity to rebuild its own architecture, to create new neural pathways, to establish entirely different default patterns. But almost nobody leverages this power because they don't even know it exists. They think their mind is fixed, that their personality is set, that who they are at 30 or 40 or 50 is who they'll always be. But neuroscience has proven that's absolutely false. Your brain remains plastic, malleable, changeable throughout your entire life. You can literally become a different person with different capabilities, different beliefs, different automatic responses. And here's why this matters so much when we're talking about wealth. When you genuinely change your identity at this deep level, when you redefine who you are in your own consciousness, any abundance that's been missing from your life will begin to arrive. Not because you're doing some magic trick, but because you've become someone who can recognize it, receive it, and hold on to it. Conversely, if you never do this internal work, if you stay locked in your old identity even while trying to build wealth through external actions, any abundance that does come your way will slip through your fingers. You've seen this happen. People who get a windfall and lose it all. People who achieve success only to self-sabotage back to where they started. That's the old identity reasserting itself, pulling them back to what feels familiar and safe. The transformation has to happen inside first. Your external strategies, your business plans, your investment, choices, all of that is secondary to this primary work of identity reconstruction. Because once your identity shifts, once you truly become someone different at your core, the right actions become obvious, the right decisions become natural, and the right results become inevitable. You stop fighting against yourself. You stop unknowingly sabotaging your own success. You start operating from a place of alignment where everything flows more easily because you're no longer divided against yourself. Now, I want to go even deeper into this because there's a misconception that stops people from even starting this journey, and it's costing them years. sometimes decades, of progress. People think they need to feel confident before they can take action. They wait until they feel ready, until they feel certain, until they feel like they have what it takes. But that's backwards. That's not how confidence works. That's not how transformation happens. You don't need to feel confident to move forward. In fact, you probably won't feel confident at first, and that's completely normal. Confidence isn't the prerequisite for action. Confidence is the result of action. It appears when you advance, not before. You take a step even though you're scared, even though you doubt yourself, even though you have no idea if it's going to work out. And then something interesting happens. That action, that movement, that decision to do something despite the fear, it starts generating a new identity. You begin to see yourself as someone who acts, someone who follows through, someone who doesn't let fear make their decisions. And that new identity generates energy, motivation, momentum. And that energy generates results, which reinforce the identity, which generates more energy, which produces more results. It's a continuous upward cycle of growth, but it only starts when you're willing to move before you feel ready. Most people have this completely backwards. They're waiting for confidence to show up so they can take action. But confidence is on the other side of action, not this side. You have to be willing to feel uncomfortable, uncertain, even scared, and act anyway. That's where courage lives. That's where growth happens. That's where the old identity breaks down and the new one emerges. And every single time you do this, every time you act despite the fear, you're proving to yourself that you're capable of more than you thought, that you're becoming someone different. Someone. If you've ever held yourself back waiting to feel ready, and you're now seeing that readiness comes from action, not before it, write in the comments, action creates confidence. Because recognizing this truth changes how you approach every challenge from this point forward. And I want you to pay attention to something that's happening right now, in this very moment, as you're absorbing these ideas. You might have felt something subtle shift inside you while watching this. Maybe it was just a slight opening, a small release of tension, a tiny spark of recognition. Don't dismiss that. Don't minimize it. That small internal movement you felt wasn't random. It wasn't your imagination. It's your mind reorganizing itself, adjusting its architecture, preparing to operate from a higher level than you've been using until now. These imperceptible internal shifts are actually the most important ones, because they happen beneath the surface of conscious awareness, in the deeper layers where real transformation takes root. Most people miss these moments entirely because they're waiting for something dramatic, some lightning bolt of revelation that changes everything in an instant. But that's not how lasting change works. Real transformation is usually quiet, it's subtle. It's a series of small internal movements that compound over time into massive shifts in how you experience reality. Think of it like tectonic plates moving beneath the Earth's surface. You don't see anything happening for years, decades even, and then suddenly there's an earthquake that reshapes the entire landscape. That's what's happening inside you right now. The plates are shifting, the foundation is being rebuilt, and even though it feels small, even though you might barely notice it, this is the beginning of something that will completely reshape your relationship with abundance. The key is to honor these moments, to acknowledge them, to let them deepen rather than brushing them off as insignificant, because your subconscious is always watching, always listening, always calibrating to the signals you send about what matters. When you recognize and validate these internal shifts, you're telling your deeper mind, yes, this is important. Pay attention to this. Make more of this happen. And your mind responds by creating more opportunities for transformation, more moments of clarity, more openings for growth. Now, I want to go even deeper into this, because understanding that Transformation happens in small internal movements is crucial, but there's another piece that determines whether those movements lead to lasting change or just temporary inspiration. And that piece is habit. Most people think about wealth as a destination, a goal you achieve and then you're done. But that's not the reality. Wealth starts as a decision, yes, but it sustains itself as a habit. Not the kind of habit you might be thinking of, not just daily routines or time management techniques. Though those can be useful, I'm talking about something more fundamental: mental habits, emotional habits, energetic habits. Wealthy people, truly prosperous people, have trained themselves to think in certain patterns automatically. They have habitual ways of interpreting challenges that empower them rather than defeat them. They have default emotional responses that support growth rather than trigger regression. They have energetic patterns that naturally attract opportunity rather than repel it. And here's what's crucial to understand. This isn't about extreme effort or endless sacrifice. This isn't about grinding yourself into the ground or forcing yourself to be someone you're not. It's about consistent internal programming, about making small adjustments to your default patterns until new patterns become automatic. Think about brushing your teeth. You don't have to motivate yourself to do it every day. You don't have to use willpower. You don't have to remind yourself why it's important. It's just automatic, a habit so ingrained that you do it without thinking. That's what your relationship with abundance needs to become. Not something you have to force or convince yourself of, but something so deeply embedded in your identity that it operates automatically, effortlessly, naturally. Your mind should default to abundance the way it now defaults to breathing. And the beautiful thing is, you can train this. You can create these habits deliberately. Every time you catch a limiting thought and choose a more empowering one, you're building the habit. Every time you feel fear but act anyway, you're building the habit. Every time you invest in yourself, believe in your potential, or see opportunity where others see obstacles, you're building the habit. And these small, consistent choices accumulate into an entirely different operating system, a new way of being that makes wealth not something you chase, but something you... If you're starting to see how your daily mental patterns have been shaping your financial reality, write in the comments, "I'm reprogramming my habits," because naming your intention makes it more real and activates your commitment to change. But there's a critical insight that ties all of this together, and it completely changes how you approach every choice you make from this point forward. Most people obsess over what they should decide. Should I start this business or that one? Should I invest here or there? Should I take this opportunity or wait for another? They analyze, they compare, they seek advice, they make pro and con lists. And all of that has some value, but they're focusing on the wrong variable. Because here's what actually determines the quality of your decisions and the results they produce. It's not what you decide that matters most. It's who you are when you decide. Think about that for a moment. The same opportunity presented to two different people will yield completely different outcomes based solely on the identity of the person making the decision. If you're deciding from a place of limitation, from a mindset of scarcity, from an identity that fundamentally believes you're not good enough or capable enough, then even the best opportunities will be filtered through that limiting lens. You'll make safe choices. You'll play small. You'll look for all the reasons it might not work instead of seeing all the ways it could. Your decisions will be constrained by the boundaries of your identity. But if you're deciding from a place of expansion, from an identity that knows you're capable and deserving and ready for more, those same opportunities look completely different. Your decisions naturally expand toward greater possibilities. You see potential where others see risk. You feel excited where others feel fear. You move forward where others hesitate. Not because you're reckless or delusional, but because your identity creates a completely different decision-making framework. Your sense of what's possible is bigger, so your choices reflect that bigger vision. This is why two people can receive the exact same advice, attend the exact same seminar, read the exact same book, and one person's life transforms while the other stays exactly the same. It's not the information that made the difference. It's the identity of the person receiving it. The person who's ready, who's already shifting internally, takes that information and runs with it. The person who's still locked in their old identity dismisses it, intellectualizes it, or tries it half-heartedly before giving up. Same input, radically different output, and the variable is always internal. Now, I want to go even deeper into this, because there's a metaphor that makes this concept so clear that once you see it, you'll never unsee it. Your mind is like the room where you live, not the physical room you're sitting in right now, but the mental and emotional environment you inhabit every single day. And just like a physical room, the quality of that space determines how everything feels and what's possible within it. If your mental room is cluttered with doubt, cramped with limiting beliefs, dark with negativity, and filled with the noise of critical voices, then everything you try to do in that space feels heavy, difficult, exhausting. Every attempt to move forward requires enormous effort because you're constantly bumping into obstacles, tripping over old baggage, fighting against the oppressive atmosphere. You might still accomplish things, but it's a constant struggle, a perpetual uphill battle that drains your energy and makes you question whether it's even worth it. But if your mental room is spacious with possibility, bright with clarity, organized with purpose, and filled with supportive internal dialogue, then every step feels natural, inevitable, almost effortless. Not because the external challenges are any easier, but because your internal environment supports you instead of fighting you. You have room to think clearly, space to see opportunities, clarity to make aligned decisions. The same actions that felt crushing in a cluttered mental space feel energizing in a clear one. And here's the insight that changes everything. You're the architect of this room. You're the one who decides what stays and what goes, what gets added and what gets removed, whether it's clean and organized or chaotic and overwhelming. Most people never take ownership of their mental environment. They let it be shaped by external circumstances, by other people's opinions, by random thoughts that drift in and set up permanent residence. They live in mental clutter and wonder why life feels so hard. But you can change this. You can become intentional about what you allow into your mental space and what you refuse to tolerate. You can clear out the limiting beliefs like old furniture that no longer serves you. You can open windows to let in fresh perspectives. You can rearrange everything to support who you're becoming rather than who you were. And when you do this, when you take full responsibility for the quality of your internal environment, your external life begins to. If you're realizing that you've been living in a cluttered mental space and you're ready to clean house, write in the comments, "I'm clearing my mental room," because acknowledging what needs to change is the first step toward actually changing it. But here's where we need to address something that most personal development content completely ignores, and it's perhaps the most powerful principle in this entire journey. There's a hidden truth operating behind the scenes of your life that determines your results more than any strategy, any tactic, any external action you could take. And that truth is this: what you do in silence, in those private moments when no one's watching and no one will ever know, creates a vibrational echo that reverberates through your entire reality. And life responds to that echo, not to your pretty words, not to your public declarations, not to what you post on social media or tell your friends you're going to do. Your private life is quietly, invisibly, relentlessly molding your public destiny through countless small choices that feel insignificant in the moment, but are actually building the entire foundation of who you're becoming. Think about it. Anyone can talk about transformation. Anyone can declare their intentions publicly, make bold statements about who they're going to be and what they're going to achieve. But what are you doing when nobody's watching? What thoughts are you thinking when you're alone? What choices are you making when there's no one to impress and no accountability except to yourself? Those are the moments that matter most, because those are the moments where your true identity reveals itself and where your actual future is being constructed. If you're disciplined in private, if you're aligned with your vision even when no one would know if you weren't, if you're doing the internal work consistently without needing external validation or applause, you're creating a powerful vibrational frequency that the universe can't ignore. That silent consistency broadcasts a signal that says, I'm serious about this. I'm committed at a level beyond words. I'm becoming this person whether anyone sees it or not. And reality responds to that level of integrity with opportunities, resources, and synchronicities that seem almost magical, but are actually just the natural consequence of your unwavering internal alignment. Conversely, if you're only consistent when people are watching, if you only show up when there's social pressure or external accountability, if your private life contradicts your public persona, you're sending a mixed signal. And mixed signals create mixed results, inconsistency, frustration, the feeling that you're working hard but not getting anywhere, because the universe is responding to what you actually are, not what you're pretending to be. Now, I want to go even deeper into this because there's a layer underneath even this truth, and it's the layer where most people's journey toward abundance gets blocked without them ever realizing why. It's the question of worthiness, of what you genuinely believe you deserve. And this is uncomfortable territory because it forces you to be brutally honest with yourself in ways that most people avoid their entire lives. Here's the hard truth. Life reflects exactly what you believe you deserve to have, not what you say you want, not what you dream about, not what you hope might somehow magically appear, but what you internally, deeply, often unconsciously feel is actually possible for you. You might consciously want wealth, success, abundance, freedom. You might talk about it, plan for it, set goals around it. But if somewhere deep inside, below your conscious awareness, you don't actually believe you're worthy of receiving it, if there's a part of you that feels like people like you don't get to have those things, if you're carrying shame or guilt or unworthiness that you haven't addressed, then no amount of external effort will overcome that internal block. This is why people sabotage themselves right when they're about to break through. This is why someone gets close to success and then does something that destroys it. This is why money comes in and immediately goes back out. It's not bad. Luck. It's not the universe being cruel. It's the internal thermostat of worthiness, resetting everything back to the level you unconsciously believe you deserve. Your outer world can only rise as high as your inner sense of worthiness allows. And if you have a low ceiling on what you believe you deserve, you'll keep bumping your head against it, no matter how hard you try to climb higher. But here's why this uncomfortable truth is actually liberating. Once you see it, you can change it. You can start examining those deep beliefs about worthiness. You can question where they came from, whether they're actually true, whether you want to keep carrying them. You can begin the work of expanding your internal sense of what you deserve, of dismantling the old programming that says you should stay small, be grateful for scraps, not want too much. And as you do this work, as you genuinely start to feel in your bones that you deserve abundance, that prosperity is your birthright, that there's Nothing wrong or selfish about wanting and having more. Your entire reality begins to, if you're recognizing that you've been blocking your own abundance with hidden beliefs about unworthiness, write in the comments, "I deserve abundance," because speaking this truth activates a shift in your deepest programming. And this brings us to one of the most overlooked aspects of wealth creation, something so simple that people dismiss it, yet so essential that without it, nothing else works. Receiving is a skill. Let that sink in for a moment. Most people think receiving is passive, that it just happens to you when good things come your way. But that's not how it actually works. Receiving is an active capacity that must be developed, trained, practiced. And here's what's fascinating. Wealthy people have mastered this skill, often without even realizing they're doing it. They've trained themselves to be open, to accept opportunities, to allow good things to flow into their lives, without immediately rejecting them or sabotaging them or feeling uncomfortable about having them. People with a scarcity mindset do the exact opposite, and they do it unconsciously, automatically, as if there's an invisible force field that repels abundance the moment it gets too close. Someone offers them a compliment, and they deflect it. An opportunity presents itself, and they find reasons why it won't work. Money comes in, and they immediately spend it or give it away, or create an emergency that requires it. They're allergic to receiving, and this allergy operates below conscious awareness, which is why they can genuinely want more, while simultaneously pushing it away every time it approaches. Think about the last time someone tried to give you something, whether it was a compliment, a gift, an opportunity, or help with something you were struggling with. Did you receive it fully, graciously, with openness and appreciation? Or did you deflect, minimize, make excuses, or feel uncomfortable accepting it? Most people do the latter. They've been conditioned to believe that receiving is selfish, that wanting things is greedy, that accepting help is weakness. And so they build this armor against receiving that blocks not just small things, but the very abundance they claim they want. Wealthy people don't have this block. They receive compliments with a simple thank you. They accept opportunities with enthusiasm rather than suspicion. They allow themselves to have good things without feeling guilty or unworthy. They've trained themselves to be open channels for abundance rather than closed fists that push it away. And you can train this too. You can practice receiving in small ways that gradually expand your capacity for larger things. You can notice when you're about to deflect or minimize or reject something good, and you can consciously choose to receive it instead, to let it in, to allow yourself to have it without immediately giving it back or destroying it. Now, I want to go even deeper into this, because there's something I need you to understand about the people you see as wealthy, successful, abundant. There's a perception that they have something you don't, some special quality or advantage or secret knowledge that makes them different from you. But that's not the truth. The truth is far simpler and far more empowering. There's nothing extraordinary about rich people. Nothing. They're not smarter than you. They're not more talented. They don't have some genetic advantage. They weren't necessarily born into better circumstances. The only difference, the single distinguishing factor between them and people who struggle financially their entire lives, is that they gave themselves permission to be rich. That's it. They decided somewhere along the way that wealth was allowed for them, that they didn't need to apologize for wanting it, that they deserved to have it and were capable of creating it. They granted themselves permission that most people spend their whole lives waiting for someone else to give them. And here's what's beautiful. You're starting to do that right now. By being here, by staying engaged with these ideas, by continuing to receive this information and let it change you, you're giving yourself permission. You're opening doors that were previously closed. You're expanding your sense of what's possible and allowable for your life. You might not feel it consciously yet, but something inside you is shifting. You're becoming someone who can receive wealth, who can hold abundance, who can embody prosperity without apology or shame. This permission isn't something you announce to the world. It's not a public declaration. It's a quiet internal shift where you simply decide that yes, this is for you, that you're allowed to want more and have more and be more. And once you grant yourself that permission, once you stop waiting for external validation or approval, everything changes. You stop playing small. You stop apologizing for your ambitions. You stop shrinking yourself to make others comfortable. You step into the fullness of who you actually are and what you're actually capable of creating. And the moment you do this, the moment you truly give yourself permission to be abundant, you'll notice that the universe seems to suddenly conspire in your favor. That doors open, that resources appear, that opportunities multiply. Not because anything external changed, but because you... If this idea of giving yourself permission is resonating with you, if you're ready to stop waiting for approval and start creating from your own authority, write in the comments, "I give myself permission," because claiming this changes everything. And I want you to notice something that's happening inside you right now, in this very moment. Something subtle but profound. Your mind is literally breaking old wiring, severing the neural pathways that kept you tied to lack, scarcity, and limitation. Every old belief you've questioned while watching this, every limiting thought you've recognized as false, every moment you've felt that slight expansion in your chest as new possibilities opened up, those are actual physical changes happening in your brain. The connections that reinforced your old identity are weakening, dissolving, making room for new pathways that support the person you're becoming. Your energy is shifting too. You can probably feel it. There's a different quality to how you're experiencing this information compared to other things you've watched or read about wealth and success. This isn't hitting you as abstract theory or temporary motivation. It's landing deeper, resonating at a frequency that feels true, almost familiar, as if you're remembering something you always knew but had forgotten. That's because your energy is aligning with a future that previously seemed too distant, too impossible, too far beyond your reach. That future is getting closer, not because time is moving faster, but because you're vibrating at the frequency of that future right now, and your identity, the core sense of who you are, is elevating, rising, expanding. And here's what's remarkable. This is all happening without strain, without force, without exhausting effort. Just by being present, by listening with openness, by allowing these truths to penetrate the protective layers you've built around your old self, you're transforming. This is how real change works. Not through willpower and grinding discipline, though those have their place, but through recognition, acceptance, and allowing. You're not fighting to become someone new. You're relaxing into who you've always been underneath the conditioning. Now, I want to go even deeper into this because there's a critical step in this journey that separates those who have genuine breakthroughs from those who have temporary insights that fade within days. And that step is this: converting recognition into unshakable conviction. You've recognized truths in this video. You've felt things shift. You've experienced those moments where something clicked and you thought, yes, that's true. I see it now. But recognition alone doesn't create lasting change. Recognition is just the opening, the crack in the door. Conviction is what kicks that door wide open and walks through it without ever looking back. This isn't about repeating motivational phrases to yourself in the mirror. This isn't about positive affirmations that you don't actually believe. This is about taking what you've recognized as true and making a firm, clear, irrevocable decision about who you're going to be from now on. It's the difference between "I understand this intellectually" and "I am living this as my reality." It's the difference between thinking about transformation and embodying it. Most people never make this conversion. They have the insight, they feel the possibility, and then they go back to their regular life and let the old patterns reassert themselves because they never made the decisive internal commitment to be different. Conviction is what happens when you stop entertaining both sides of the argument. When you stop going back and forth between I can do this and maybe I can't. When you plant your flag in the ground and say, this is who I am now, this is what I believe, this is how I operate, no negotiations, no exceptions, no going back to who I was. That level of internal certainty creates a gravitational force so powerful that your external reality has to bend around it. Doubt and wavering create wishy-washy results. Conviction creates inevitability. And here's what you need to understand. Conviction isn't something you wait to feel. It's something you decide to embody. You choose it, you commit to it, you act from it even when parts of you are still uncertain. Because conviction isn't the absence of doubt. It's the decision to move forward powerfully despite doubt. It's saying, I'm doing this anyway. I'm becoming this person regardless of whether every part of me is convinced yet. And when you operate from that place of decided conviction, the doubting parts eventually catch up. They have no choice but to align with the direction you've committed to with such. If you've made the shift from recognition to conviction, if you've decided with absolute clarity who you're becoming, write in the comments, I'm committed to my new identity, because declaring your conviction makes it real and activates its power in your life. And this is where everything we've talked about converges into a single transformative understanding. Wealth isn't about external effort. It never has been. You can work yourself to exhaustion. You can hustle and grind and sacrifice everything. And if your internal world is chaotic, divided, misaligned, you'll still struggle. Because what creates wealth isn't the volume of your effort. It's internal coherence. It's the alignment between who you believe you are and what you're actually doing in the world. When those two things sync up, when your identity and your actions are operating from the same frequency, life starts flowing differently. It's like suddenly you're swimming with the current instead of against it. Opportunities that were always there but invisible to you suddenly become obvious. Ideas that seemed disconnected start linking together in ways that create value. Decisions that used to paralyze you with overthinking become clear, simple, obvious, not because the external world changed, but because you're finally coherent internally. You're not fighting yourself anymore. You're not sending mixed signals to the universe. You're a unified force moving in one direction. And that coherence creates a momentum that carries you forward with far less friction than you ever experienced before. Most people never achieve this coherence. They want wealth while believing they don't deserve it. They take action toward their goals while their internal dialogue sabotages every step. They say yes to opportunities while their energy screams no. And then they wonder why nothing works, why they're exhausted, why results don't match effort. It's because they're divided. Half of them is moving forward and half is pulling backward, and the net result is staying stuck in the same place despite tremendous energy expenditure. But when you do the internal work, when you resolve that division, when your entire being aligns around a singular identity and vision, everything becomes easier. Not because life suddenly decides to favor you, but because you've removed the internal resistance that was making everything harder than it needed to be. You become a coherent system, and coherent systems are powerful, they're efficient, they're unstoppable. Now, I want to go even deeper into this, because knowing this intellectually is one thing, but actually living it is another. And the bridge between knowing and living is found in a specific practice that most people resist because it feels uncomfortable, uncertain, even irrational. That practice is this: acting from your new identity even when you don't see external results yet. This is where most people fail. They do the internal work, they shift their identity, they feel different inside, and then they wait. They wait for proof that it worked. They wait for external validation. They wait for their circumstances to change before they're willing to fully commit to behaving like the person they've decided to become. But that's backwards. That's the old paradigm sneaking back in, convincing you that the outside has to change before the inside can fully express itself. The truth is exactly the opposite. You have to act from your new identity before you see results. You have to make decisions like the wealthy person you're becoming, even when your bank account still reflects your old reality. You have to carry yourself with the confidence of someone who's already successful, even when your current circumstances suggest otherwise. You have to treat opportunities with the decisiveness of someone who knows their worth, even when you're still building evidence of that worth. Because action taken from the correct identity is the actual fuel that generates tangible changes in your physical reality. Think of it like planting a seed. The seed doesn't wait until it sees the tree before it starts growing. It starts growing in the dark underground, invisible to the world, trusting in the process, responding to the internal blueprint that says, "I am a tree." And eventually, inevitably, that internal reality expresses itself externally. You're the same way. You don't wait for wealth to appear before you become someone who can handle wealth. You become that person first, in your thoughts, in your energy, in your daily choices, and the wealth follows as a natural consequence. This requires faith, not in some external deity or mystical force, but in the process itself. Faith that when you align internally and act from that alignment, the external world will reorganize to match. Faith that you don't need to see the full path before taking the first step. Faith that your new identity, consistently embodied through action, will create results that your old identity never could. And every time you choose to act from your new identity, despite the current evidence, despite the doubts, despite the if you're ready to start acting from your new identity before seeing external proof, write in the comments, "I act from who I'm becoming," because this commitment is what transforms everything. And here's what you need to understand about this building process, because it's easy to get discouraged when you don't see instant transformation. Every thought you consciously choose, every belief you deliberately strengthen, every action you take from your new identity rather than your old patterns, these are like bricks. You're laying them one at a time, creating a foundation, constructing a path toward the abundance you're claiming. And yes, it's slower than you'd like. Yes, it requires patience. Yes, there are moments when you'll wonder if you're making any progress at all. But here's what makes this approach unshakable. It's not built on luck or timing or external circumstances. It's built on you, on the internal work you're doing, on the identity you're cultivating. And that makes it certain. That makes it unbreakable. Think about a brick wall. You don't build it all at once. You lay one brick, then another, then another. Each individual brick doesn't look like much. You could argue that a single brick doesn't even constitute progress toward a wall. But if you keep laying bricks consistently, without stopping, eventually you turn around and there's a massive structure behind you that will stand for generations. That's what you're doing right now, with your consciousness, with your beliefs, with your daily choices. You're building something that can't be torn down by temporary setbacks or external challenges, because its foundation is internal, unshakable, yours. Most people abandon the process too early because they're looking for dramatic results immediately. They lay a few bricks, don't see a wall yet, and decide it's not working. But you're different. You understand now that transformation is cumulative, that every aligned thought and action matters, that nothing is wasted. You're in this for the long game, not the quick fix. And that patience, that commitment to the process regardless of immediate outcomes, is what separates those who build lasting wealth from those who chase it unsuccessfully their entire lives. Now, I want to go even deeper into this because there's a fundamental principle that governs this entire journey, and getting this right determines whether everything else you do actually works or just becomes more effort without results. And that principle is this: your first priority above everything else is internal alignment, not strategy, not tactics, not connections or opportunities or perfect timing. Internal alignment. Getting yourself to a place where every part of you is pointing in the same direction, where there's no division, no contradiction, no part of you secretly working against what you consciously want. And here's what's liberating about making this your primary focus. You don't need to know all the steps. You don't need a detailed roadmap of exactly how you're going to get from where you are to where you want to be. You don't need guarantees that it's all going to work out perfectly. You don't need anyone's approval or permission or validation. The only thing you need, and this is crucial, is to feel in your bones that you are sufficient to receive what you desire. Not that you'll become sufficient someday when you're better or smarter or more prepared, but that you're sufficient right now, exactly as you are. This isn't about arrogance or delusional thinking. This is about recognizing your inherent worthiness, your fundamental capability, your basic human right to create and receive abundance. Most people operate from a deep sense of insufficiency. They believe they need to earn the right to be wealthy, that they have to prove themselves worthy, that they're not quite good enough yet, but maybe someday if they work hard enough they might be. And that core belief of insufficiency sabotages everything they do, because you can't receive what you don't feel sufficient to hold. But when you shift to internal alignment, when you recognize that you're already enough, that your worthiness isn't something you earn, but something you inherently possess, everything changes. You stop chasing approval, you stop second-guessing yourself, you stop waiting for permission, you simply align with what you want and move toward it with the quiet confidence of someone who knows they belong there. And that alignment, that internal coherence, that sense of sufficiency, that's the secret ingredient that makes everything else work. Without it, all the strategies in the world won't help you. With it, you barely need strategies because opportunities find you, resources appear, and paths open. If you're feeling that shift toward internal alignment, toward recognizing your own sufficiency, write in the comments, "I am already enough." Because owning this truth dissolves the barriers that have been blocking your abundance. But I need to be honest with you about something, because if I don't address this, you might misinterpret what happens next and think you're doing something wrong when actually everything is going exactly right. As you move through this transformation, as you align internally and start acting from your new identity, you're going to feel resistance, and not just a little discomfort. Real resistance, the kind that makes you question everything, that whispers maybe you should go back to what's familiar, that creates anxiety and doubt and the urge to retreat to safety. And when that happens, most people interpret it as a sign that something's wrong, that they're on the wrong path, that this whole transformation thing isn't working. But that interpretation couldn't be more backwards. Resistance isn't an error signal. It's not a sign that you've failed or that you're incapable of change. Resistance is actually the clearest indication that you're doing exactly what you need to be doing. It's the sign that you're expanding, that you're pushing beyond the boundaries of your comfort zone, that you're exiting the known territory of who you've been and entering something greater, something larger, something your old identity couldn't contain. Your nervous system doesn't like this. Your ego doesn't like this. All the protective mechanisms that have kept you safe and small are going to activate and try to pull you back. That's not a problem. That's the process. Think about what happens when you exercise a muscle you haven't used in a long time. It burns, it aches, it feels uncomfortable, sometimes even painful. And if you didn't understand how muscle growth works, you might interpret that discomfort as damage, as a sign to stop. But anyone who's trained their body knows that the resistance, the burn, the discomfort, that's the muscle breaking down so it can rebuild stronger. Mental and emotional growth works the same way. The resistance you feel is your old identity breaking down so a new one can emerge. It's not comfortable, but it's necessary. It's not pleasant, but it's productive. And if you can reframe resistance as evidence of expansion rather than evidence of failure, you'll be able to move through it instead of being stopped by it. Every time you feel that contraction, that urge to quit, that voice saying this is too hard or too scary or too much, you can recognize it for what it actually is: proof that you're growing beyond your previous limits. And instead of retreating, you can breathe into it, acknowledge it, and keep moving forward anyway. That's how you build the capacity to hold more, to be more, to create more. Not by avoiding resistance, but by understanding it and moving through it with awareness. Now, I want to go even deeper into this because there's a sequence to how wealth actually manifests in your life. And getting this sequence wrong is why so many people stay stuck despite their best efforts. And the sequence is this: external wealth always, without exception, follows internal transformation, never the reverse. You can't skip steps here. You can't get rich and then become the kind of person who can sustain wealth. It doesn't work that way, as evidenced by the countless lottery winners and inheritance recipients who end up broke. The money came before the identity shifted, and so the money left because there was nothing internal to hold it. But when you do the work in the right order, when you first become someone capable of sustaining wealth, when you transform your identity and align your beliefs and establish new patterns of thinking and behaving, then reality has no choice but to align with that version of you. It's not magic, it's natural law. Your external circumstances are always calibrating to match your internal state. Always. And once your internal state shifts permanently, once you're no longer the person who accepts limitation and scarcity, your external reality begins its recalibration process. This is why I've been emphasizing internal work so much throughout this entire video, because that's where the real power is. That's where the actual transformation happens. The external strategies, the business tactics, the investment knowledge, all of that matters, but it's secondary. It's the application of your transformed identity, not the source of your transformation. First, you become, then you do, then you have. That's the sequence. And trying to reverse it is like trying to harvest fruit from a seed before you've planted it and let it grow. It's putting the cart before the horse. And it never works, no matter how hard you... If you're understanding that your external reality is simply reflecting your internal state, and you're committed to doing the inner work first, write in the comments, internal first, external follows. Because affirming this principle locks it into your consciousness as truth. And this brings us to one of the most critical aspects of achieving that internal transformation, something that sounds simple but requires brutal honesty and consistent vigilance. Creating internal coherence isn't just about adding new beliefs and behaviors. It's equally, if not more importantly, about recognizing and eliminating the old patterns that have been keeping you limited. You can't just stack new programming on top of old programming and expect clarity. You can't build a new identity while still feeding the old. This requires conscious awareness of when you're slipping back into patterns that don't serve you, and the willingness to interrupt those patterns the moment you notice them. Every single time you doubt yourself, every moment you accept less than you deserve, every instance where you shrink back from what you actually want and settle for what feels safe, you're reinforcing the old version of yourself. You're sending a signal to your subconscious that says, actually, this is who I still am. Disregard that new identity we've been building. I'm still the person who doubts, who settles, who plays small. and your subconscious, being the obedient servant it is, says, "Understood, maintaining old patterns." And just like that, all the progress you've made gets undermined by a single moment of unconscious regression. This is why awareness is so crucial. You have to become vigilant about your own patterns. You have to catch yourself in the act of self-sabotage, of self-limitation, of accepting mediocrity. And when you catch yourself, you have to consciously choose differently, not just once, not just when you feel motivated, but every single time, as a non-negotiable practice, because each time you choose the new pattern over the old one, you're weakening the old neural pathway and strengthening the new one. Each time you act from your elevated identity instead of your limited one, you're making that elevated identity more real, more automatic, more permanent. Think of it like weeding a garden. You can plant beautiful new flowers, but if you don't pull the weeds, they'll choke out everything you're trying to grow. Your old patterns are the weeds. They'll keep coming back if you don't actively remove them. And yes, it's tedious work. Yes, it requires constant attention. Yes, you'd rather just focus on the positive and ignore the negative. But that's not how transformation works. You have to clear the ground for the new to take root and flourish. Now, I want to go even deeper into this, because there's a specific manifestation of this issue that trips up almost everyone at some point, and understanding it can save you years of frustrated effort. It's what I call the scattered energy problem, and it's happening to more people than realize it. You can't attract abundance if your mind is divided. You just can't. It's physically, energetically impossible. If part of you desires prosperity while another part of you feels fear about having it, those two energies cancel each other out. If you want opportunities but simultaneously maintain deep internal doubts about whether you can handle them or deserve them, you're broadcasting contradictory signals into the universe. And when your signals are contradictory, when your energy is scattered in multiple directions at once, the results you get are weak, inconsistent, disappointing. Your energy disperses instead of concentrates, and dispersed energy creates dispersed results. Think about light. Ambient light fills a room but doesn't have much power. But when you focus that same light through a laser, it can cut through steel. The difference isn't the amount of light. It's the coherence, the alignment, the fact that all the light is moving in exactly the same direction. Your mental and emotional energy works the same way. When it's scattered across contradictory desires and fears, it's like ambient light, present but not powerful. When it's coherent, when every part of you is aligned toward the same outcome, it becomes laser-focused and capable of cutting through any obstacle. Most people live their entire lives with scattered energy and wonder why nothing seems to work. They want financial freedom, but fear the responsibility that comes with wealth. They desire success, but worry about what people will think. They dream of abundance, but feel guilty about having more than others. And all of these contradictions create if you're recognizing areas where your energy has been scattered by contradictory desires and fears, write in the comments, "I'm aligning my energy," because acknowledging scattered energy is the first step toward focusing it. Stalemate, where nothing moves forward with any real power. Your energy is fighting itself, and the universe responds by giving you exactly what you're broadcasting. Mixed results, delayed outcomes, frustration that feels endless. But here's where the solution becomes beautifully simple once you understand the mechanism. Abundance is attracted from clarity, not from confusion. This is absolute. This is non-negotiable. This is the way the energetic system of creation works. If your ideas about what you want are scattered, vague, constantly changing, then your actions will scatter in every direction without building momentum toward anything. If your focus is weak, constantly distracted by the next shiny object or pulled away by doubts and fears, then your energy disperses before it can accumulate into something. powerful enough to shift your reality. And if your mind doubts, if there's that constant internal questioning of whether this is really possible for you, then your reality will mirror that doubt back to you with circumstances that seem to confirm your uncertainty. It all comes back to you, your clarity, your focus, your unwavering internal certainty. When you get crystal clear about what you want and who you need to become to have it, when you eliminate the noise and the contradictions and the wavering, when you focus your energy like that laser we talked about, your reality has no choice but to respond. Opportunities that were invisible suddenly become obvious. Resources you didn't know existed appear. Connections happen that seem like coincidences, but are actually the natural result of your coherent energy, broadcasting a clear signal that the universe can match. Most people never experience this because they never achieve the clarity required. They kind of want wealth, but they also want security. They sort of want to grow, but they also want to stay comfortable. They desire change, but they're terrified of what that change might cost them. And so they remain in this murky middle ground where nothing is clear enough to manifest powerfully. But you're different now. You're understanding that clarity isn't optional, it's the foundation. And creating that clarity requires making definitive choices about what you want and committing to it without reservation. Now, I want to go even deeper into this, because even if you achieve perfect internal clarity, even if you align your energy and eliminate contradictions, there's still one critical factor that can undermine everything if you're not aware of it and actively managing it. And that factor is your environment. Your environment isn't just the physical space you occupy. It's the conversations you have and overhear, the habits you practice daily, the routines that structure your time, the stimuli you expose yourself to through media and content, and the countless small decisions you make from the moment you wake up until you go to sleep. And all of this, every single element of your environment, is silently, constantly, relentlessly molding your identity. You're being shaped by what surrounds you, often without any conscious awareness that it's happening. If you're surrounded by people who think small, who complain constantly, who don't believe transformation is possible, that energy seeps into you. If your daily routine includes hours of consuming content that reinforces limitation and scarcity, that programming embeds itself in your subconscious. If your habits are misaligned with the person you're trying to become, you're sending yourself contradictory messages every single day. And all of this environmental influence can slowly erode the internal work you've done, pulling you back toward old patterns without you even realizing it's happening. This is why you must protect your mental terrain as if it were sacred during this transformation process. Because it is sacred. Your mind is the garden where your future is growing, and you cannot allow just anything to take root there. You have to become selective, almost ruthless, about what you expose yourself to. Not in a fearful or paranoid way, but with intentional awareness and clear boundaries. This doesn't mean you have to cut everyone out of your life or isolate yourself. But it does mean you need to consciously curate your environment to support your transformation rather than undermine it. Choose conversations that elevate rather than drain. Establish routines that reinforce your new identity rather than your old one. Consume content that expands your vision rather than contracts it. Make decisions, even small ones, that align with who you're becoming rather than who you've been. Because every element of your environment is either supporting your growth or, if you're seeing how your environment has been shaping you and you're ready to become more intentional about what you allow into your mental space, write in the comments, "I protect my mental terrain," because declaring this creates a boundary that your subconscious will honor. Everything either moves you toward your vision or away from it. And this understanding of environmental influence leads us to something that completely changes how you approach the journey toward wealth. Because once you're protecting your mental terrain and creating the right conditions for transformation, there's a temptation to think that more effort equals faster results, that if you just work harder, hustle longer, sacrifice more, you'll accelerate your progress. But that's actually backwards. That's the old paradigm talking, the one that equates suffering with worthiness, that believes you have to earn abundance through pain. The truth is radically different, and once you see it, it will save you years of unnecessary struggle. Abundance doesn't arrive when you do more. It arrives when you do better. Wealth doesn't respond to how much you sacrifice or how many hours you grind. Wealth responds to clarity, to focus, to identity. It responds to precise actions taken from aligned consciousness, not scattered actions taken from desperation or obligation. One perfectly aligned decision made from your elevated identity will create more value than 100 frantic actions taken from fear or scarcity. Think about it. Two people can work the exact same number of hours, but one is operating from clarity and strategic focus, while the other is just staying busy to avoid feeling the discomfort of uncertainty. The first person makes exponential progress. The second person spins their wheels and wonders why nothing changes. The difference isn't effort, it's precision, it's quality over quantity. It's acting from the right consciousness rather than just acting for the sake of action. This is why some people seem to achieve more in 6 months than others. Achieve in 6 years. They're not working harder. They're working from a different level of awareness. Their actions are precise because they're rooted in clarity. Their decisions are powerful because they're made from aligned identity. Their progress accelerates exponentially because they're not wasting energy on misaligned effort. They've understood that it's not about doing more things. It's about becoming the right person and then doing the right things from that elevated state. Now I want to go even deeper into this final revelation, because everything we've talked about in this entire journey converges here, in this one transformative understanding that changes how you relate to wealth forever. And that understanding is this: wealth isn't a goal you achieve. It's not a destination you arrive at. It's not something external that you acquire. Wealth is a level of consciousness. It's a state of being. It's a frequency you tune into and operate from. When you ascend to that level of consciousness, when you embody the awareness and identity of someone who is already abundant, money stops being something you desperately search for. It becomes an answer to the questions you're asking, a resource that flows naturally to support the vision you're manifesting, a tool that appears when you need it, because you're vibrating at the frequency that attracts it. You don't attract wealth from desire, from wanting, from that hungry energy of lack. You attract it from identity, from knowing, from the absolute internal certainty that abundance is not something you're chasing, but something you already are. This is the invisible book opening to its final pages. This is the revelation that only those destined for wealth truly understand. You don't become wealthy and then develop wealthy consciousness. You develop wealthy consciousness, and then wealth materializes as the inevitable external reflection of your internal state. You stop trying to get rich and instead become someone for whom richness is simply the natural state of being. And from that place, from that elevated consciousness, everything changes. Not because you're working harder or using better strategies, but because you've fundamentally shifted. If this understanding is landing for you, if you're seeing wealth as a state of consciousness rather than an external achievement, write in the comments, "Wealth is who I am." Because claiming this truth transforms your relationship with abundance at the deepest level. And if you've made it this far, if you're still here with me after this entire journey, that tells me something important about you. You're not looking for quick fixes or surface-level motivation. You're ready for real transformation. You're someone who recognizes that this invisible book we've been exploring isn't just information. It's a mirror reflecting back the person you're becoming. The content on this channel is designed for people exactly like you, people who are willing to go deeper, who understand that lasting change happens from the inside out, who are committed to becoming the version of themselves that naturally attracts the abundance they desire. So, if this resonates with you, if you want more of these conversations that challenge you to grow and expand beyond your current limits, go ahead and subscribe. Because there's so much more we're going to explore together, and I'd love to hear from you. If this message landed exactly when you needed it, if you feel like this video found you for a reason, write in the comments, "This message was meant for me." I read every single comment, and there's something powerful about declaring your readiness out loud, even if it's just typing a few words. It makes the transformation real. If this conversation created value for you, if something shifted while you were watching, just tap that like button. It's a small gesture, but it tells me this content is reaching the right people, and it helps others who need this message find their way here too. And listen, there's a video right here that takes what we've talked about even deeper. It's the natural next step in this journey, and I think you're going to find it incredibly valuable. Click and continue with me over there. Let's keep building this new identity together. I'll see you in the next one.